Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Second time this week. We're here in the CBD in Sydney, and wanted to take a second pass on the annual general meeting presentation for Alexium International. I'd like to open with a few words for our new chairman here, Simon Moore.
Thank you, Billy. And again, our sincere apologies for the audio-visual shortcomings of the presentation at the AGM. Unfortunately, our host's systems let us down, and we did think it was important to have a record for people who were unable to attend in person the actual annual general meeting itself. We, at the meeting, did take questions and answers from the floor, and we will encourage you to submit your questions into the chat of the meeting itself here, to try and keep the answers and the backwards and forwards to a manageable level. What we're going to try and do is just take questions in the actual chat function itself and not verbally engage, because as we saw at the AGM, that can lead to a very lengthy backwards and forwards, and we think it's best to engage as many people as possible rather than have a short, small number of questions and not get to people's questions eventually. So with that, I might hand over to Billy to run through the presentation. I will say that Billy has also been spending some of his time in Sydney speaking with a number of stockbrokers and prospective investors. And as a result, he's been getting a bit of feedback around the presentation, and as have I, and the feedback has been very positive about the progress the company's been making. But with that, I'll pass it to Billy and we'll get into the presentation. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you all for joining, many of you during your lunch break. We understand your time is precious. I'm going to move through the presentation a little faster today, and that way we can allow more time at the end to answer questions. Okay, so one of the things I was mentioning earlier in the week is that Alexium is making the change from doing R&D and developing IP to commercializing those technologies in the form of products that we're pushing into the market. So one of the things we really emphasize in our presentations now is that we're a performance materials company, not a specialty chemical business. And the nuance to that is Alexium is doing more than just phase change materials, which is our chemistry and flame retardant chemistries these days. We're also doing wovens and non-wovens and other innovative materials for thermal regulation, humidity management, then also in the protective area with fire protection. And the fire protection you'll hear today is much more than military fabrics. It's also, we're starting to move back into FR, fire resistant socks for bedding, and FR workwear. And we've had some breakthroughs in our product development and our testing with customers for the market over the last year that have opened up some new opportunities going forward. And for our new friends joining the call, our technology is broad ranging. We have 25 global patent applications. We are still doing advanced research and product development, but I would tell you the shift of the focus in the company now is to take the IP that's been developed over the last 2 or 3 years and push it into the market for a commercial outcome. And as many of you know, last year, my first year at the annual general meeting, I was about a month into the new role at that point. At this point, I have 13, 14 months under my belt, and things are moving along well. And we've had some nice advancements in the business during that period. And just one last point there, we do make our products in the US, but we are moving to global distribution. And it is our intent to be on every continent eventually. And we're learning that our products do travel well, so we are able to distribute them. And we've made some inroads into Europe. We're hoping to make those same inroads into Australia in due time. So our product suite really comes in our different platforms. For thermal regulation, Alexicool and Biocool are our 2 phase change materials. And I like to always break this down because Alexium was born out of a group of scientists and technologists that were developing technologies. And I'm a business guy, and I like to understand things in very basic terms, and I like to look at it from the perspective of a consumer. So I like to explain how phase change materials work in a very basic way. If you've ever taken the medicine like a Tylenol or any kind of pill that's in a dissolving capsule, that's pretty analogous to how a phase change microencapsulated chemistry might work. The difference is you take those medicines that dissolves the capsule and you absorb the medicines. In this case, we microencapsulate chemistries in a shell. So little nano shells in the wet chemistry that we apply to textiles and foam. When you put heat to that, the shell dissolves and the phase change material within the shell absorbs heat, thus regulating the temperature. And then when you take the source of the temperature away from it, the shell then reforms. And that's the microencapsulation magic that we do with Alexicool and BioCool. Both were launched into bedding. Alexicool is our more traditional workhorse. It's more petroleum-based material. BioCool is made of bio content and best in class in the phase change microencapsulated materials for textiles. It is 94% bio content. It is a sustainable product, and we have the USDA bio preferred content certification. So very good sustainability story. And it is our premier PCM. And we've seen a lot more adoption of that product as many companies are moving to more sustainable products. And it's also important to understand that Alexium's products enhance our customers' products. So our whole goal here is to give our customers the ability to differentiate their products through nice features that allow them to either sell at a higher price or sell at a higher volume. So phase change materials mostly in the bedding sector right now, but we are starting to break into some adjacent markets, which I'll get into later into the presentation. Thermal comfort is our Delcool and Eclipsis product. Delcool has launched over the last year, and we are live in retail stores now. It's focused on humidity. So comfort and humidity, I like to explain that in the most basic terms is if you've ever been hot and humid, you're uncomfortable. But if you've ever been cold and humid, you're also uncomfortable. It's the humidity and that clammy, wet feeling that leads to discomfort. And Delcool really approaches that, and it's a fabric that we're now producing in the southern United States through textile partners, and then our applied chemistry, and it's sandwiched in 3 layers. And the technology is in the middle layer. It absorbs humidity from the air, and that's in the sleeping environment between the blanket and the mattress or in a pillow around the head. And it removes the moisture from the air, absorbs it 8 hours throughout a night of sleep. And then when the person gets out of bed, the technology then recrystallizes and regenerates and gets ready for the next night of sleep. The interesting thing about Delcool is it's best in class for humidity management because a lot of cooling technologies are out there and a lot of comfort technologies out there, but they exhaust in the first hour or two of the person sleeping in the bed. Delcool runs 8 hours throughout the whole night of sleep, then regenerates for the next round. Eclipsis is our heat dissipation. That's a laminate. It's a non-woven material, so another rolled good in a form of fabric that we sell. Eclipsis is also going live in beds right now, but also live in tactical vests as a cooling substrate behind a tactical vest. As the user gets warm, it moves heat to the outfall of the vest through the armholes, the torso hole, and the neck hole, giving significant cooling. And there were a lot of technologies in the market for armor that were using motors or ice vests. Motors would break, motors require power, motors are heavy. Ice vests melt, water pouches bust, water gets everywhere. We've given a very durable fabric now that can be sewn into the vest that move heat away from the person. And now we're live in the market with that and looking now for public tenders to pull more volume through into that space. And then we'll be launching an Eclipsis bed and an Eclipsis pillow into the retail market here in the calendar year coming up in FY24. And then our flame retardant, which is the company was born out of flame resistant chemistries, Alexiflam and AlexiGuard. The differentiator really between the two are one is made for more synthetic fibers and the other for natural fibers. And I'm happy to report we've had a nice breakthrough with our FR business in the last few months, and positioning the business for significant growth in that area for calendar year 25 and beyond. So we are committed to a sustainable world. We are really pushing for transparency in our company. So obviously we're a publicly traded company. Most of you are shareholders. So we do report performance of the company and all the things that the management team are up to. And I will tell you, we're going to be stepping up the cadence of our reporting going into the new year. Right now, we do our 4 C's at the close of each quarter. We do a half-year report, and then we do a full-year report where I join a webinar and we field questions. We're not going to step that up to in between those periods. We're going to start doing a 6-week cadence. So we'll start doing a webinar like this, and we would invite you all to join and ask questions where we can address everybody's questions and give meaningful updates to the business in a much regular frequency. And we'll also disclose financial results and any meaningful material developments at that point. So we really want to step up the transparency and inclusion for all shareholders to the market. On the sustainable bit, we're very happy that the last year we barely missed the goal, but we did have nice gain. And we had a goal of 70% of our PCM sales transitioning over to our sustainable bio-based product, BioCool. We fell just short of that at 65%, but very close to the 70. And, over this next calendar year, pretty sure it'll move well past 70% because of the pull through from the customers for that bio-based material. I won't read through all the routes to sustainability, but I do want to point out that we realize that Alexium's share price will go up and Alexium's value of the business will go up with better sustainable business. And it's also just generally the right thing to do for our environment and for our kids and generations to come. So as you can see in that box to the right, there's a lot of routes as we develop our technologies and push them into the market for that sustainability story. For energy reduction, carbon capture, bio-based products, and natural-based flame-resistant materials. And all of those are around basically sustainability of the earth, using less energy, more reusable packages, natural chemistries that are used in flame resistance that don't have forever chemicals that are incredibly hard to dispose of and contaminate environments. We are absolutely committed to doing the right thing with our products. And again, the silver lining to that is by doing so, it creates more value for the business. And you'll learn right now by government regulation and by financial pressures, it's becoming harder and harder to gain capital, it's being harder and harder to gain investors, and harder to do business with certain large markets if you aren't doing the right thing. So really, it's non-negotiable. You have to do it, but we're committed to it because it's the right thing anyway. So FY23, the year in review, clearly I joined the company. Sorry to be Captain Obvious, I'm here. But it's been an interesting last year, 14 months in here, and the team is come together very well. The culture is really shifting at Alexium to a more market-facing, customer-oriented, and not to say that it was a bad culture before, but it was a different culture that was more inward-facing, focused on developing technology and IP. Now we know we have good technology, which is part of the reason I'm here. I was very confident around this business joining that the technology was good and that we had a really good chance of large financial results from that technology. And again, that's why I came on. So we restructured to really push those into the market. We reset all of our market development priorities. So we grew our core bedding market revenue despite a really significant slump in bedding. And I will tell you, it continues in the U.S. It's very soft. Some will debate we're in a recession, some will debate we are not. But I can tell you for sure, and we can look at the ISPA data we'll show here in a little while, that the mattress and bedding market has been in a recession for about 2 years. And that came on the heels of a feeding frenzy that happened during COVID. And then shortly thereafter, those high levels of sales went very cold. And I can tell you, there's folks out there right now, they're making decisions of, do I buy a mattress or do I buy groceries? And I think we all know the answer to that. But it's important to understand that the book of business for Alexium in the bedding market is still quite robust. It's just that our customers' demand is way down. Therefore, our sales of our products into those channels is way down. A recovery in that market would buoy Alexium to cash positive results and actually sustain profitability. So, we expect the market recovery to happen in due time. And when it does, it's going to carry significant results. And we continue to saturate those markets and those customer base and add new customers and go globally with those products in bedding. But also part of the strategy is also to diversify away from that significant concentration in bedding to make the business more robust. Happy to report that we've had a breakthrough in our FR nylon cotton military fabric. We had successful lab tests in the Pyroman testing at North Carolina State University. I'll pick that back up in the presentation here in a little while. We've gone commercial with Eclipsis for tactical gear, which is a fantastic proving ground for Eclipsis in protective gear. And tactical gear was also one of our choices because Alexium's historically been close to development work with the military and law enforcement. So it was a natural place for us to test that technology out. But tactical gear is a good market for us, but it's only one step in a direction of moving towards athletic gear, which is a much bigger market and much more global for us. So we're moving down that path. Delcool, our dehumidification fabric I described earlier, has gone live. That's in fabric and pillows, and that's in a large U.S. retail store. For those of you familiar with the U.S. retail, that's Macy's. You can find that out there in their stores and in their e-commerce channels. We are working on testing of Eclipsis and footwear as a cooling technology, and that's with a top 5 footwear brand. And I would tell you it's top 5, but it's really top 3 because 3 of the 5 brands are owned by Nike. So we're really working in the top 3 of worldwide footwear, and results early on are positive, and we expect to commercialize that in the next calendar year. And we're now in testing actively with our phase change materials in cold chain packaging, which is a vast marketplace for us to move in with thermal regulation. And it's an emerging market as more people move to smaller temperature controlled packages, moving away from large insulated boxes with styrofoam and plastic and cardboard and lots of waste. Smaller, smart material packages that can control temperatures, that are also circular packages that can be reused over and over. So we're starting to make inroads there, and that testing is on a medical container actually for blood bags to control the temperature of blood for blood transfusions and blood delivery, actually in a military application. Happy to report also over the last year, we've been able to reduce our overhead. So we've cut costs and we've maintained our year-over-year operating expenses. And that's been in a difficult environment. And I can tell you, inflation is going absolutely through the roof in the United States. Luckily, starting to tail off a little bit here lately, which leads to maybe some more positive news for the economy. But over this last year, it really spiked. And really, every time the phone rings and you pick up the phone, it's usually a vendor or some sort of supplier calling to raise a price. And I'm happy to report our team has been able to hold those flat and control our costs. And we've reduced our overhead in a very tough environment. When I first joined the company, we were dealing with a quality issue. And it wasn't a quality issue born of anything that Alexium did in our product. It was a quality issue related to an overseas customer vendor that was applying our phase change materials. We were able to work through that quickly with our product development team, getting involved with that manufacturer to show them the appropriate way to apply the materials. But that's how I started in the business. And I let the team know we've got to make a significant focus on quality control. And quality control isn't always just in the chemistry or the products we make. It's also teaching the customers how to use it so they don't create a quality issue in their application method. Since then, which was really September of last year, we haven't had any quality issues since. And I'll knock on wood that we don't have any more, but we are active in our quality control systems, QA, QC process, and readying the business to scale up and make all of our products on time, on spec the first time. We've maintained healthy gross margins, right around 40%. And some of the new technologies we're bringing on could push the margins even higher as we go forward. But our goal remains to be right around 40% with our gross margins, because we will be moving some of the products into some high volume channels. And that may afford a little bit lower margin, but much higher revenue per unit, much higher revenue over each period. So we are going to stick with the target of 40. And then 65% of our PCM moved to the bio-based content. So the bedding market, look, I won't explain the graph, but that I can tell you there's a 38% contraction that we've seen over those last handful of quarters. And despite that, we've continued to add customers in the bedding space, and we've held on to our market share with our current base, and now we're moved globally. Also diversifying within bedding, we've launched Delcool and Eclipsis into the channels you see there. The market continues to be challenging, but we're going to stick with it. It'll end up being a part of our book of business going forward. Right now, it makes up a large percentage of Alexium sales. Our aim is to continue to grow those sales, but to diversify in other places so that bedding is only one sector that we're in, and the company would be more robust. And that would take a lot of the lumpiness out of our month-over-month, quarter-over-quarter sales to be diversified over different markets. And like I said, mattresses have been soft, bedding has been soft, but it's still a really good market channel for our technologies. So exciting new news. We did have a successful PowerMan test. The PowerMan, I would encourage anyone, if you're intellectually curious like myself, and I was at the North Carolina State testing labs to watch this testing. And typical of any young boy, I've always been intrigued by fire and anything military or Army related. And it was an exciting day. Burned 14 different types of uniforms. I'm happy to report that we passed the PowerMan test for the military standards. That's a 4-second test on a mannequin that is fitted with sensors all over the mannequin. And what they're measuring with the sensors is how the fabric holds up, the temperature, and the second and third degree burns of the mannequin, which basically simulates a significant fire event for an individual. As you can see in the videos, it's a 2-piece military, and it's our FR NICO, which is 50% nylon, 50% cotton, with Alexium's proprietary Alexium chemistry treated, and it's printed in a licensed military print. And the uniqueness is that we passed it 4 seconds, and we passed the maximum body burn is 35%. We came in the low 30s, around 31%, had a very good result. And as you can see in the 3-second after, the 30-second after test, our uniform was completely intact. We had no melt, no drip of the fabric. We had no breakthrough in the fire of the uniform, and it's self-extinguished. And so that's very good for the path that this company's been on for a long time in launching an FR NICO product. And the desire of the U.S. military to have a nylon cotton option is very legitimate, and it also makes a lot of economic sense. There's an incumbent fabric they've been using for decades, made by a very large U.S. producer, and it's very hot, it's very expensive, and they don't push it into all the military enlisted personnel's uniform packages, and they get 4 to 5 uniforms per year. And they're looking for something with a natural fiber, in our case, cotton here, that is flame resistant, and they want a flame resistant uniform on all of the enlisted soldiers. That's the ultimate goal. But they had to get the cost down, and they needed a lighter fabric that was more comfortable, more breathable for warm weather climates. And so Alexium's had a nice breakthrough in the last year in our technical development and in having this positive test result. And what this tells us is to stay on the path in developing this military fabric and preparing the company to respond to a military tender with a very viable option that's, again, meets their price criteria, meets their breathability, and meets the FR requirements to be put on all the enlisted soldiers. The other interesting part that this did for the company is it showed us that we can make also an FR fabric that can compete with those same types of fabrics the military were using in the industrial sector for personal protective equipment for a FR fabric. So think of jumpsuits that they wear in petrochemical and manufacturing plants that are flame resistant. This fabric can go into that. So the next phase of our work will be to improve the softness and breathability of the fabric, which are really micro adjustments to what we're doing. Now that we know we can pass the FR requirements at the most stringent set of conditions used by the military, and stay the course, be prepared to respond to the military tender that's anticipated to happen over the next year, and now start pushing the fabric into industrial channels from there. I'm going to turn the microphone over to Lisa Hupka. She's our Vice President of the Finance and Accounting. I want to just say to everybody, Lisa has taken the reign as the leading our finance team at Alexium. We're in very good hands, and I've really enjoyed working with her over the last year. And with that, Lisa, I'll turn it to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us again today, and appreciate your time and effort in doing that. I know that you've all had the opportunity to see our annual report, so I just wanted to cover just a few key points from our financials for the past fiscal year. For our revenue, we finished the year at $7.2 million, which is down from the prior year of $8.2 million. And the primary reasons for that is, like Billy's already talked about, with the weakening of the U.S. retail market amid inflationary concerns that had a huge impact on our customers, as well as the delayed adoption of some of our newer technology by some of our customers. But despite the fact that we did decline by $1 million in fiscal year 23, we have had some momentum build and have had 2 consecutive quarters of sales increases. So that's positive news for us, and hopefully that will continue. For gross margin, we finished 23 at 39.1% gross margin compared to 40.7% in 22. So that is a slight decline due to the customer and product mix, but that is still a very healthy gross margin. And like Billy talked about, we're targeting to stay around that 40%, even with the introduction of some of our newer products. And with a gross margin that healthy, though, it's easy to see that with the right level of volume, we are definitely poised for success in the future. Operating expenses were at $4.4 million compared to $4.5 million in the prior year, in spite of a very tight labor market in the U.S. and inflationary pressures. So the management team has a very strong focus on keeping operating expenses as low as possible, and very cost conscious in that. EBITDA, that for those of you not as familiar with some of our financial acronyms, that's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. We finished 23 at a loss of $1.5 million, which was down from the prior year of $1.2 million. And that's, again, due to the decreased volume and slightly lower margins, but offset a little bit by the decrease in the operating expenses. Cash and cash equivalents were at $0.5 million at the end of FY23 compared to $1 million the year before. And our line of credit was basically flat. Some of the things from that had cash impacts this year, certainly our results of operations had an impact on our cash, but we also amended and restated the convertible note with Collington Capital, and that's a new 3-year term, and it injected an additional $1 million into the business. And excuse me, the availability on the alternative line of credit remains strong. It was at $1.1 million at the end of FY23, and it will help fund our growth in the future. So we're confident in that, and we're very, it's a key focus for management to optimize and manage our cash So we're definitely focused on that. And that's all I had. I'll turn it back over to you, Billy.
Thank you, Lisa. So one of the things we've really pushed into the strategy of the company is a level of focus. Alexium has a lot of opportunity ahead of it, and there's a lot of different markets that we could pursue. But if you try to do everything at once, you seldom achieve many. So we have to narrow the focus to really get to what our near-term objectives are so we can deliver the financial results needed and lift the share price, but also keep some of the strategic focus there at a lesser focus, lesser percentage, to keep the long range, large investment opportunities, large market opportunities alive and going. So it's a balancing act, and that takes focus and discipline from the team. So I joined the team, obviously, and Dr. Brookins moved into the Chief Technology Officer role from CEO. And that's been a nice transition. He and I have really found level ground. We're working well together. And it's helping him focus on really driving product development and making sure that our technologies are rolled out appropriately. And it allows me to focus on the customer and the supply chain side of the business to really get us ready to scale up. The significant thing that's happened, though, is the group, for a small company, we've really come together and rallied around results. So that 70-20-10 you've seen in our 4 C's and our half-year reports, that's 70% focus on our core markets, 20% on adjacent markets, and 10% on breakthrough markets. And that really means put most of our energy in business development and product development into our core, which is where our short-term opportunities are, 20% on innovation and breaking through, and 10% on longer range, significant breakthroughs. Operations, we've secured our supply chain over the last year. We've gone back where there was single source or only had one contract manufacturer, and we've qualified 2, and in some cases 3, across the supply chain to make sure we're more robust in case there's a failure in any of them, a problem, or if we need to challenge the cost and create any competition across that supply chain. You need to have at least 2 to 3 in the pipeline to do that. We missed on the cash flow positive, even though we were over Q4, but that remains the goal for this year. So FY24 is diversify. Yeah, we're going to start, and I would tell you we're running more the 70-20-10 ratio this year, and really will the rest of the year. But you're going to see the company start to shift to a 40-20-40. That's 40% on the core market, which is mostly bedding, 20% on the adjacency, which is our Eclipsis moving into tactical gear, and our FR into military fabric. And we're well down the road on those developments, so that's why it's a lower percentile. But where we are shifting more of the weight of our time this year and into FY25 through 27 will be into those breakthrough markets. So that's where you're going to see us move into cold chain packaging. You'll see us move into more Eclipsis into athletic gear and footwear and headwear. And you'll see us start to position for cooling and thermal management into electronics, which is a very vast market. So this year, we've looking for more growth in revenue on the second half of the year. We've progressed the FR NICO as we reported, and we've commercialized Eclipsis and tactical gear. Now we're going to move Eclipsis and our FR into new markets. Again, that's shoes, cold chain, and workwear. Again, continuing to bolster the supply chain, continuing a stringent focus on financial discipline, controlling costs, and moving towards a self-sustaining cash flow positive business. And we are actually active this week and working on making sure the funding's in place to bridge us, to give the runway to deliver the meaningful results and the share price that our shareholders deserve. Beyond that, it's our eyes on the future. And again, we're going to continue down that 40-20-40 path and continue to diversify the business. So we want to maintain ourselves in the bedding and the core space, continue to grow that incrementally, saturate that market, diversify globally in that market, but then move into much larger adjacent markets, again, athletics, military products, and also packaging from that place. So priorities for the year. What I'm working on right now, we're active in recruiting, is we are adding more professionals to the business development side of the house. That's a natural evolution as we move from developing IP into commercializing it. So we're going to put more horsepower into business development, and that's going to be through full-time employees, and we're looking to add contract manufacturing sales reps that work as sales agents in the open market. And actually, we're in the interview process right now and bringing those folks on, and we hope to add at least 1 to 2 folks by the new year. We have heightened our cash and commercial discipline, and we are working to improve the funding runway right now. We'll be sharing that news with you guys by the new year. We are driving pipeline conversions. Another thing that we've been driving since I've been here is to underwrite all of our business with contracts. So that's our suppliers and our customers. We have a number of contracts right now in negotiation, and we'll be announcing each one as we close them. They will have price, volume, and timing associated with them. And that's a very significant change for the company, because a public company should have strong terms around its business, shore up the commitments from the customers and suppliers. So I'm happy to say that is moving down the right path. So year over year in our core bedding market, and that's our core products, PCM, Delcool, and Alexium. Again, we've commercialized Nyko, and that's going to be the goal, and move that into workwear. We have commercialized Eclipsis and tactical gear, and then we want to move Eclipsis into adjacent markets. Eclipsis is a very novel technology that it's very durable. It's infinite heat transfer, and there's a lot of places it plays well. And so we're really going to push that breakthrough in that 40% discipline I was mentioning earlier. And then the operational highlight is we are diversifying supplier base. If anybody's learned anything over COVID, is supply chains can be disrupted quite easily, and you better go deep into your supply chain to make sure you can't be disrupted. Because if you can't get the raw materials and you can't deliver those finished goods, then you're pretty much dead in the water. So we understand we're very reliant on our suppliers and our contract manufacturers to deliver our technologies. And we're shoring up those relationships with contracts and making sure we have lots of options in that channel. And then again, focused on funding so that we can deliver and diversify and grow revenue under the current strategy. So the go-to-market focus is in the bedding market, year-over-year revenue growth from our target market, and that's U.S.-produced mattresses, pillows, and mattress toppers. We've seen renewed interest in FR socks. So in the mattress industry, especially in the United States, you're seeing regulators clamp down on fiberglass being used in mattresses as an FR. Fiberglass being dangerous, can break up, can cause health concerns, safety concerns. So we're seeing renewed interest for FR socks. Alexium has very good technology for that. So that shift in regulation is moving new FR opportunities into our pipeline. 45% of the world's mattresses are sold by Serta Simmons and Tempur Sealy. Happy to report we're active in both of those, but we're also moving down the line in the mattress market. And I will tell you that your traditional mattress producers and bed producers are being disrupted, and have been for the last decade or so, by a lot of e-commerce, a lot of smaller players that are utilizing quick delivery. They're utilizing foam mattresses that can be made a lot less expensive. And so the marketplace for mattresses has really been reshaped over that decade and segmented out to a lot of smaller players that are in that remaining 55 percentile. What Alexium's doing to capture business there is we've now positioned some of our PCM products to go into those foam channels, and we're looking for high volume sales there. Our Delcool product is also priced such that it can be a nice comfort and cooling and humidity upgrade for a mattress that's sold as a bed in the box, sold through e-commerce. And an easy way to look at that is some of those mattresses are sold in the $300 to $1,000 price range, US dollars. But they're traditionally, those are just a foam mattress, very basic. It's rolled and crammed into a box that's about 2 or 3 feet wide and about 2 feet tall. shows up at your house, you puncture the bag, the thing inflates, and it takes a few days to cure. But the thing about foam mattresses is they're hot. And because foam itself is a very insulative material. So we've got some technology now that we've got priced as such to drop into those channels. And what we're looking for there is turnover month over month, high volume, because traditionally Alexium's technologies were positioned for only high-end bedding products that were at the upper price points. We're now repositioning some of the products into those higher volume, mid-channel, and even into the lower channels, where we can reach a more broad customer base through higher volume, through e-commerce, through bed and box. So look for some breakthroughs in that space in the coming quarters. Another thing that's changing in our go-to-market is we're going direct sales to brands. Traditionally, we worked through tier 1, tier 2 manufacturers in the bedding market. Now we're looking to produce some of our roll goods into cut and sewn mattress toppers. That would be Delcool, and also pillow liners with fiber and foam pillows. And what we're doing there is positioning a product that can go to a large retailer that has a private label, where they can brand the technology and the finished form factor of a pillow or topper under their house brand to move through their retail channels. So we wouldn't be marketing as an Alexium pillow brand or bed brand, but we would make a finished form factor that would go to a brand that could pull it straight into their own either e-commerce channels or their retail stores on the shelf. So that is a change in strategy from the company, and we are leveraging a lot of the freeboard capacity in the southern United States. There's a lot of textile capacity, a lot of foam capacity, a lot of fiber capacity to make those products. And it is Alexium's technology that pulls a lot of those products through to the end consumer and differentiates the product. So we've essentially moved up the supply chain, supplying a form factor, which brings higher revenue per unit and higher volume and more customer base to the pipeline. Again, tune in as we knock down some of those opportunities in the new year. Military uniforms, we're going to continue on the path with the U.S. Military branches, the largest ones being the Army and Marine Corps. Right now, they are not rolling out an FR fabric to all of the enlisted. Only a small percentage of their enlisted personnel gets FR uniforms. They do want FR uniforms on all of their enlisted. Obviously, the breakthrough we had positions us for responding to that demand. I will warn everyone, it is a competitive landscape, and it does take time to get to that market because we got to get through about 12 to 18 months of field trials, and we have to be successful in a tender. And we're in a competitive landscape with some large incumbent players. But I would tell you, our chances are better now than they've ever been. We have a secure supply chain where we've worked with established military fabric suppliers to produce the fabric all the way from the yarn, the cotton and nylon yarn, to the weaving, to the finisher that does the military printing and finishes our FR, to Alexium actually doing the direct bidding to the government and supply the uniforms to the government's cut and sew contractors. We positioned ourselves at the front of that to deal directly with the government, which is a change for Alexium. In the past, Alexium was working through an intermediary. Now we're working directly with the government with our development work. And we did that to control the narrative and to make sure we were at the front of the line in the testing, and that we were working with established suppliers in the supply chain that were ready to scale up. So when the military puts out a tender, asks us to respond, we're also ready to scale up to full production and meet that demand to roll out those uniforms. And as everybody's been watching the global news, things are getting quite tense out there around the world. And a lot of military coffers were run down during COVID and run down over the last several years. A lot of spending is going into that sector right now to restore those coffers. So it's you're seeing increased demand, unfortunately, due to a lot of the unrest around the globe. Tactical gear, we are focused more on law enforcement than we are on military. This is for a few reasons. Law enforcement, especially in the U.S., is also restoring their coffers. But we're looking for federal law enforcement, federal prison systems, and U.S. Border Patrol adoption of our tactical gear. what we've learned in launching Eclipsis in the tactical vest is there's a lot of tactical vest suppliers out in the world. It's a very segmented market. So we've proven that the product works. We've got ASTM testing, and we've got 3 to 5 different customers ready to go to retail. But those are smaller volumes, and they're not as they don't meet our ultimate financial objectives. So now we're pushing through those large civil associations to pull through the demand. So what we want is to get spec'd in to the tenders, so that when they put out a tender, they'll say, look, we want a cooling option in that, and that they've already tested Eclipsis, they know it works, so they request Eclipsis in the tender, and then all the folks that have proven our technology with their vests are able to respond to that tender, because the government purchasing, they're going to have competition, so they'll have to have at least 3 bidders, and so we're well positioned for that. But now we need to make sure the government's aware of the product and that it gets spec'd in for those requests for quotes and proposals. In cold chain, we're moving into that space now. We're active on the testing product, and that is with our phase change materials, doing temperature control for a blood bag that's in a package for delivering blood to emergency situations. Large market there, that will open up cold chain opportunities for medical supplies. There's a lot of shipping in the pharmaceutical industry that's temperature controlled. We've already proven that our product can take a package from 24 as far out to 72 hours in controlling the temperature in certain ranges. And that's really a best in class for a non-motorized and non-ice packed product. So we're expecting big things there in the near future. Athletic shoes, we're working again with a large global athletic shoe company. We're active in the testing now. We expect results by our FY third quarter, first quarter of the calendar year, and we're in negotiations on that product now. That proves concept for us to start to move out into the market with other athletic shoes, potentially military boots, and potentially workwear boots in that sector, all of which traditionally are hot. And then workwear. So the FR fabric work that we did for the military really opened up opportunities for workwear. I failed to mention earlier when I showed the power band is that the military's body burn requirement is 35% maximum body burn for that type of test, which is a ridiculously stringent test. For the industrial sector, it's 50%, so it's a little bit lesser of a requirement. So we cleared it quite comfortably. That is a very competitive space as well. It's also a very big space, but it also needs alternate materials coming into it, especially with natural fibers that are more breathable. I realize I'm going a little long, so I'm going to step on the gas here. Again, our top priorities for the next year is pushing PCM further into the bedding space. We're really expecting large volume placements from Del Cool, and commercializing Alexium, also embedding, and also the military and workwear spaces. That's the military fabric. Again, you can see our targets there. The successful testing moves us further along that in the pipeline for commercial outcome. And again, the Eclipsis into the vest, we expect growth out of that in the next 12 months. Cold chain shoes and workwear, all large markets, all large opportunities. Those are all in our breakthrough focus. Again, we're active in projects across all of those, and we'll be updating each of you in a 6-week cadence as we move forward and knock down new opportunities that lead to revenue as we go. This is important. I'll leave it. I won't read it, but I'll leave it to folks to read and ask questions as we move along, and maybe pick this up in our next presentation. But it shows the timeline as we move items through our pipeline into commercial outcomes. And we'll continue to report in this format so you can see showing progress of work. I know sometimes it's hard to see from the outside looking in what's actually happening at Alexium, what's the outcome of it. You hear a lot of the stories, and there's very long development cycles that we work in. So sometimes it can become very frustrating to see, hey, are they gaining any ground? Is anything actually going to come of all this? this is us putting that into a view where hopefully you can ask questions and we can report the timelines of where we are in each sector of our pipeline and show you as we move things along in the company's progression. And then lastly, really, gang, it's been a tough year, tough market, a lot of headwinds in the market. We had a few setbacks with a few customers. Some of the customers are having a hard time themselves. We had a few projects get delayed, but we've stayed the course. We're putting the funding in place to keep going forward. We're getting very positive feedback, very positive traction from our technology. Again, all this will lead to ultimately what we owe each of you is a return on your investment, a much higher price, share price, and a very profitable company. So I won't belabor everything said here. What I will assure you, though, is that the technology is there and the team is there to execute. There's really nothing left for us to do now but to stay the course, work hard, be very disciplined, and execute the strategy, deliver results. So I went a little long there. I'm going to open it up for Q&A. And thank you for your patience. And again, we're sorry for the technical difficulties earlier in the week. Sorry we had to do this a second time. But I am glad that we were able to circle back and open up the floor. So I can see we've got some questions in the queue here. And hi, Jeff. So you've got a question about the military. Give me 1 second.
Billy, do you want me to read it so that those who can't see the question know what the questions are?
Yeah, that'd be great.
And then I'll turn it over to you to answer.
Yeah.
So Jeff Nelson asked that you talked about the U.S. military, but he wanted to know if there's separate progress in regards to the Marines and the Army. For example, samples were supplied to the Marines under an RFQ a few months back. And so he's asking what is happening with the Marines, and is the fabric adjustments mentioned happening to the Army or to the Army and the Marines?
Yeah, so I have to be very careful, Jeff, about what I say here, because we are in active development and there is a sensitive nature of that. But I would tell you that the answer is yes, there is separate progress for those two different branches. We did participate in a request for quotes with the Marines. It was an initial RFQ. We were not awarded in that. They chose two incumbents. There was 5 different fabrics, 3 from one, 2 from the other. Of those 5, 3 were really legacy products that really aren't differentiated, and 2 seem to be novel new technologies. The word that we're hearing is that the Marines are really paused on that project right now. We don't know where it's heading in their testing, and that we didn't get selected in that next round of testing, but we're not out of the race for an overall adoption in the military. What they're signaling is that multiple branches of the military are likely to go with the same fabric, and there's other suppliers, Alexium being one of them, that weren't in that selection for that one branch. And you could see multiple branches of the military consolidate their spending power to go to 1 or 2 different fabrics. And we did not make that Marine next round of testing, but we are active in testing with the Army right now. There's another round of testing for that to move forward, where we submit fabric to NATIC, which is DevCom in Massachusetts. And what we're doing there, now that we know we have positive results for our flame-resistant material, is we're working on enhancements to the fabric to make it a little bit softer, a little bit more wearable, and a little bit lighter for breathability. But yeah, they are 2 separate channels, and we are still active.
Okay, the next question is also from Jeff Nelson, but it is directed to Simon. He's asking, can you provide any comments on Collington's initial and ongoing investment and attraction to Alexium?
Sure. Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Jeff, for your question. Collington first invested in Alexium just prior to the COVID adventure. And so we've been investors now sort of coming through 3 years. And We would say that the company has made steady progress against our investment thesis. We feel that COVID did slow everything down in terms of the progress and that we would have liked to have seen across all of the company's broader product initiatives. We feel, though, however, that the addition of Billy to the management team is the critical missing piece, or has been a missing piece in the team, and that he brings a leadership and an experience that the company needed, and especially across the commercialization process. The team has continued to make excellent advances on the technology side of the business, and what we felt was needed at the company was that commercial leadership and direction, and Billy has brought that in spades. And so we feel right now that the company's as well poised as it's ever been, and in its best ever position to realise its full potential. That we feel will come up over the course of the next 12 to 24 months as we move through those commercialisation phases and put the company's product into a broader range of markets, getting away from just the mattress market into a broader bedding areas, and then, as Billy touched on today, into a number of other adjacent areas of applications for very large use cases for the product.
Next question is from Tony Grace. Are you considering, or is it likely you will be exercising a capital raise over the short term to assist moving products forward?
Look, I think Billy's been clear that the company will need some interim finance. We are in discussions with a number of the larger shareholders around what that form that finance may take, and we want to try and be in a position that both gives the companies the best chance to realise some near-term milestones before necessarily pushing into that financing, but at the same time also raise sufficient capital to allow Billy and the management team to look past the very near term and do some medium-term planning. So I think in terms of news there, I think it's one of those situations where we'll be coming back, and Billy's laid out today a process of sort of upgraded engagement or more frequent engagement with the shareholder base, and we'll keep people posted on the near-term funding arrangements that we're thinking about putting in place.
Okay, the next question is also from Jeff Nelson. Are you able to provide some comment on what the questions and replies were that were raised at the AGM meeting?
Certainly, I might take this one, Billy. Jeff, look, we're going to do our best to recreate a transcript. It won't be word perfect. The meeting was meant to be recorded, and the audio visual was a fail. So from the best efforts of recollections of those in the room at the time, put together by a Climb, who are our company secretary service, we will circulate those via the company website to shareholders and attach them to this recording so that people have, as best as we can, have a recreated situation there. Look, in a big picture sense, there were questions, really three questioners from the floor, and I think the overarching theme of the questions were there were some questions a little bit around. There was a group of questions to do with Rasheen's resignation as the chair and what was the background to that. And I was pretty clear in the response that the decision for Rasheen to resign related to her putting the company's interest first and not wanting to have the AGM overcoloured or overshadowed by the vote for her re-election. It appeared on the proxies that it was likely that she would not be re-elected to the board, and as a result couldn't continue in the role of chair. That vote was led by 3 large shareholders, each of whom had their own reasons for voting against Rasheen's re-election to the board. There was no adverse behaviour or anything like that. Rasheen has been an exemplary director in terms of her performance. She has always put the company's interests first and continues to do so, and even post her resignation from the board has been actively engaged with board members around what can she do to help, and a desire, if there is some sort of fundraising, to be supportive of that. So that was one group of questions. The other, I think, sort of key group of questions really were around the funding question that we just talked to, that for Tony's question, really with some views expressed, are we sure that, or say, so they were worded as questions, but they were the theme of the questions were to make sure that an eye is being kept on all shareholders' interests in the raising of additional new capital, and that the existing shareholders be accorded the opportunity to participate in any new capital, in particular any long-term capital like an equity raise. The response to those from me was that we take our directors' duties very seriously, and that we would be doing our very best to ensure all shareholders had the opportunity to participate on as favourable terms as possible in any subsequent capital raise, and that again we will be keeping everybody abreast of any developments on the fundraising side of things as they say the alternative approaches become clearer. But I'd say those were the 2 core thematics coming from the floor, and there were questions about the directors' shareholdings, and there was, because that led obviously into a discussion about the resolutions, where 2 of the directors, Paul and Carl, there were resolutions approving them to be paid in shares rather than cash for their directors' fees. Again, we felt that as a chair, I spoke to the positive nature of that and the alignment that would bring between the directors and the shareholders, and importantly, it preserves cash in the business and allows that cash to be used to advance the business interests and operations. And that was really the major things that we covered off. But we'll do our very best to have a transcript of the best recollections of the meeting, both the questions and the replies, posted on the website, along with this recording of the presentation that Billy provided. There's also already been posted my chairman's address, which touches on a couple of these things as well.
Looks like maybe one more came in. Oh, yep. Jeff, you are certainly welcome. And Tony, thank you for your questions as well.
Yeah.
Look, everyone, we ran a little long here, but we really appreciate you tuning in, and sorry if it's a second time for some of you. And again, we apologize for the technical difficulties earlier this week. We will do our very best to make sure that doesn't happen again. And we're going to be doing some dress rehearsals before the next AGM to make sure all technology is buttoned up and ready for prime time. So with that, I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. We appreciate your continued support of our business, and rest assured we're committed to delivering results. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Mm-hmm.